They tried to bury my name. I stood behind the last row of folding chairs at my own funeral and watched my husband cry over a closed casket. That was the first time I understood something was truly wrong. Not strange, not unlucky. Wrong. The church smelled like white lilies, wet coats, and old carpet. People whispered my name like it already belonged to the past. Natalie Harper. Beloved wife, loyal friend, taken too soon. My picture sat beside the casket. It was from a summer trip to Lake Erie, back when I still smiled with both eyes and still believed the man at the front of the room loved me. Even held a white handkerchief to his face. His black suit fit perfectly. It always did. He looked broken in all the right places. His shoulders shook when the pastor said I had been a light in a dark world. Then he leaned over the polished wood and whispered something I could not hear. My best friend, Claire, stepped beside him and placed a hand on his back. It was not a comforting hand. It was a claiming hand. That was when the grief inside me turned cold, because I was alive. I was 10 yards away in a thrift store coat, with the hood pulled low over my face, and nobody in that church knew it. 3 days before that funeral, I woke up in a roadside motel outside Pittsburgh, with no phone, no wallet, and no memory of how I got there. The last thing I remembered was driving home to Columbus after visiting my aunt. Rain hammered the windshield. Headlights followed me for too many miles. I pulled into a gas station because my hands were shaking. I remembered buying black coffee. I remembered calling Evan. He did not answer. After that, nothing. When I opened my eyes in the motel, my head felt split open. My clothes were damp. My wrist was bruised. My wedding ring sat loose on my finger, as if someone had taken it off and pushed it back on. A cheap TV was bolted to the wall. On the table was a plastic cup of water and a folded newspaper. I opened it because I needed something solid to look at, and there I was. My own face, printed in black and white. La, Omar Madid, afti ar car fo you ein rav ar. The article said my car had gone off the old bridge near Mill Creek. It said a body had been recovered downstream. It said personal items found in the vehicle pointed to me. Personal items. My purse, my license, my phone, maybe my necklace. I tried the motel phone. First I called Evan. Straight to voicemail. Then Claire. Straight to voicemail. Then my office at the hospice center. But the receptionist cried so hard when she heard my voice that she hung up. That was how I learned my obituary had already been posted. I should have gone straight to the police. I know that now. But when the whole world has declared you dead while you are still breathing, clear thinking does not come easily. I was terrified. I had no ID, no money, no proof, and deep in my stomach, I had the terrible feeling that if I walked into a police station with a story like that, someone would call Ivan before I could finish my first sentence. So I borrowed $10 from the motel clerk, said I had been robbed, and took a bus back to Columbus. By the time I arrived, the city was gray with spring rain. I stood across from my own house for nearly an hour. The blue shutters, the maple tree, the porch swing I had begged Evan to hang, then hung myself because he said he was too busy. The upstairs window, where I used to watch the sunrise before early shifts. Cars filled the street. Casserole dishes moved through the front door. People cried on my porch, and Evan was inside, accepting sympathy for losing me. I went around back to the loose brick by the garage, where we kept the emergency key. It was gone. My own house had locked me out. I slept that night in a 24-hour laundromat with my head against a dryer and my funeral program folded in my pocket. I found it in a trash can outside the church office. Someone had thrown away a whole stack of them. The next morning, I went to my funeral. I wanted to see who cried. I wanted to see who did not. For the first 20 minutes, I almost believed it had all been a horrible mistake. My coworkers stood together, red-eyed and quiet. Mrs. Alvarez from next door crushed a tissue in her fist. Even my old English teacher came, though I had not seen her in years. Then I saw Evan and Claire. They did not sit together. They were too smart for that. Evan sat in the front pew beside his mother. Claire sat 2 rows back. But grief makes people careless. When the pastor asked everyone to bow their heads, Evan turned slightly. Claire lifted her eyes. Their eyes met for only a second. It was enough. After the service, people filed past the casket. They touched it, kissed their fingers, whispered goodbye to the woman they thought was inside. Claire went last. She leaned close to the casket. I moved nearer, pretending to look at the flowers. Claire whispered, "It's almost over. Not goodbye. Not I miss you. It's almost over." Evan heard her. His jaw tightened. Without looking at her, he whispered, "Not here." My stomach dropped so hard I nearly fell. I walked out before anyone could see my face. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sidewalk shone like glass. I leaned against the church wall and tried to breathe. My hands shook so badly I tucked them under my arms. There was a stranger in my casket. There was a husband pretending to mourn me. And there was a best friend who knew too much. My death had not been an accident. The first person I trusted was not a friend. His name was Detective Marcus Bell. And he had been at the funeral in plain clothes. I noticed him, because he was the only person not pretending to grieve. He stood near the back with his arms crossed, watching Evan more than the casket. He was tall, maybe 50, with tired eyes and a face shaped by disappointment. When everyone left for the cemetery, he stayed behind and made a phone call. I waited until he walked to his car. Then I stepped from behind a dripping oak tree and said, "Detective Bell." He turned fast, one hand moving toward his coat. I lifted both palms. "Please don't shout." He stared at me. For 2 whole seconds, neither of us moved. Then his face changed. Natalie Harper. Hearing my name from a stranger's mouth almost broke me. I nodded. He looked toward the church, then back at me. "You need to come with me." "No police station," I said. "Not yet." "You were declared dead yesterday." "No. There is a body." "I know that too." "Then you need protection." "I need answers. And I need to know if my husband is involved before you call him." Detective Bell did not answer right away. Rain dripped from the oak branches between us. Finally, he said, "I never liked the bridge story." That was how I ended up in the back room of a closed diner, wrapped in a cook's jacket, while a detective bought me coffee and listened to me explain how I had woken up erased. He asked where I last remembered stopping. He asked if Evan knew my route. He asked if anyone had access to my passwords, medical records, car keys, insurance papers. Every answer made me colder. Evan knew my route because I had texted him before I left my aunt's house. Claire knew my passwords because she had helped me build my online shop. Evan knew my insurance because he handled our taxes. Claire knew my schedule because she practically lived in my kitchen every weekend. Together, they had enough pieces of me to build a fake death. Detective Bell told me what he could. My car had been found nose, down in the river below the old bridge. The driver's door was open. My purse was inside. Blood was on the steering wheel. A body was found 2 miles downstream the next morning. The body was badly damaged. Identification came from my license, my watch, a small gold necklace Evan said belonged to me, and a preliminary dental comparison. I touched my throat. "My necklace." He nodded. "Gold bar. Initials NH." I almost laughed, but it came out like a cough. "Claire gave me that. I stopped wearing it 6 months ago because the clasp broke." He wrote that down. Dental comparison. I asked, "Your dental records were emailed to the coroner." My dentist doesn't email records without a release. No, he said. They don't. That was the first crack in the wall. Detective Bell gave me a prepaid phone and told me to stay hidden. I wore donated clothes from a church basement. I cut my hair with nail scissors in a gas station bathroom. I bought cheap sunglasses and learned to move through my own city like a ghost. At the cemetery, I watched Evan drop a white rose onto the grave that had my name on it. Claire stood far away under a black umbrella. She never looked at the grave. She looked at Evan. After everyone left, Evan stayed. His phone rang. He answered, and I crept closer behind a row of headstones. He said, "I told you. Not until the certificate is filed." A pause. "No. She doesn't have anyone else who can challenge it." Another pause. "Claire, calm down." I closed my eyes. There it was. He lowered his voice. "The house, the policy, the shop, all of it. But we have to be patient." The house, the policy, the shop. My whole life turned into a list. Then he said, "Don't talk about the girl." The girl. My breath stopped. Avon looked around, and I ducked behind the stone. When I looked again, he was walking toward his car. That night, Detective Bell and I met in the parking lot of a closed hardware store. I told him what I heard. He had news too. The dental release had been signed electronically with my name at 2:13 in the morning. The form had been sent from a coffee shop on Livingston Avenue. Claire's favorite coffee shop. Also, a death benefit claim had already been started on one of my insurance policies. By Ivan, I ask, "Can you arrest him?" "Not yet." "Not yet is killing me?" "I know." "No, you don't." My voice cracked. Everyone thinks I'm dead. My husband is selling my life piece by piece, and there's a woman in the ground with my name on her. You don't know what that feels like. He let me be angry. Then he said, "You're right. I don't. But I know how cases die. They die when people move too soon. So we waited. Waiting is not weak. Waiting can be the sharpest knife you own." I started watching Claire. Claire and I had met when we were 22 and broke. She was the funny one, the wild one. I was the planner, the person who knew how to stretch $40 until payday. For years, I thought we balanced each other. And while I trusted her with my pain, she learned where all the doors were. I found her at my shop on a Tuesday afternoon. The shop was called Second Light. I sold restored lamps, old mirrors, and hand-painted furniture. It was small, but it was mine. My father had left me enough money for the first year's rent, and I built the rest with bruised knuckles and late nights. Now a silos at forth, femel, emergency CY, sign hung in the window. Claire came out carrying a box with my handwriting on the side. Holiday inventory. Brass fixtures. She put it in her trunk and looked around like a thief in daylight. I stood behind a bus stop across the street and took pictures. She went back inside. When she came out again, she was on the phone. "Yes, I got the ledger," she said. "But her laptop is password locked." Her laptop, my ledger, my shop. Then she said, "Ivan, I am not doing this alone. You promised me." A bus roared between us, blocking the rest. I followed her in a rideshare paid with cash Detective Bell had given me. She drove to a storage facility on the west side and entered through a side gate. I took a picture of the unit number before she pulled the orange door down. B17. Detective Bell got a warrant 2 days later. Inside were boxes from my shop, my broken necklace, a copy of my birth certificate, insurance papers, and clothes that did not belong to me. A cheap red jacket. Size small. The jacket had river mud on the hem. In the pocket was a receipt from a diner near Mill Creek. Dated the night I disappeared. 2 coffees. 1 slice of apple pie. At the bottom, written in blue pen, was a name. Tessa. The girl. Detective Bell found her before I did. Her full name was Tessa Monroe. She was 24. She worked nights at a gas station outside Lancaster and had been staying with friends after leaving a bad boyfriend. Her older sister in Tennessee had reported her missing after 3 days of unanswered calls. Tessa was the woman in my grave. I sat in Detective Bell's car and read her name until the letters blurred. Tessa Monroe. Not a body. Not evidence. A woman. A woman who liked apple pie. A woman whose sister was calling her phone and praying for a miracle. A woman who had not known she was being pulled into my nightmare. Before Tessa, I wanted my life back. After Tessa, I wanted the truth to have teeth. The next piece came from Mrs. Alvarez. She lived next door to Evan and me, and she hated him because he once cut down the lilac bush that grew over our fence. She was 73, nosy in the way that saves neighborhoods, and she wrote everything down. I knocked on her back door after dark. When she saw me, she screamed so loudly, I nearly became a ghost for real. Then she grabbed my face with both hands and pulled me into her kitchen. I knew it, she said. I knew something was wrong. What did you see? Your husband. The night before your accident, he carried 2 suitcases from your house to Claire's car. You're sure? I am old, not blind. She opened a drawer and took out a small notebook. In it, she had written Claire's license plate, the date, the time, and one sentence beneath it. Evan wearing blue gloves. I sent a photo to Detective Bell. Alvarez watched me with fierce eyes. You are not going back to him. No. You are not going to forgive him because he cries pretty. No. You are going to be smart. For the first time since I woke up in that motel, I smiled. Yes. Being smart meant letting Evan believe he was winning. He held a memorial sale at my shop 10 days after the funeral. That sentence still turns my stomach. He put my handmade pieces on discount tables and told customers he wanted my work to find loving homes. He wore his wedding ring and accepted hugs. Claire stood behind the register. They had turned my grief into retail. I watched from across the street in a borrowed delivery uniform as people carried away pieces of my life. A woman bought the green reading lamp from our bedroom. A young couple bought the oak mirror my father taught me to sand. A man bought the yellow chair I painted after the miscarriage because I needed something bright to survive that winter. Evan handed him a receipt and said, Natalie would have loved that. I dug my nails into my palm until pain kept me quiet. Detective Bell later told me the sale helped us. Claire deposited the cash into a new business account, opened after my funeral. Evan was manager. Claire was co-owner. My signature was on the paperwork. My dead signature. Every forged signature became another nail in their own coffin. Then came the twist none of us expected. The medical examiner called Detective Bell. Tessa had not drowned. She was dead before she went into the river. There were traces of a sedative in her blood, the same sedative used in my hospice center for severe anxiety and end-of-life care. It was controlled, logged, counted every shift. Evan did not have access to that medication. Claire did. 2 years earlier, after she lost her office job, I helped her get hired in administration at the hospice center. She did not handle patients, but she handled supply invoices. She knew where things were stored. She knew who was careless with keys. She knew how to smile at tired nurses and make them trust her. My kindness had given her the hallway. She had used it to steal death. The audit found missing vials, adjusted logs, and a broken camera that had been under repair the week before I disappeared. Claire had filed the repair request. I remembered the gas station coffee. Bitter. Too bitter. I remembered headlights. I remembered calling Evan and getting no answer. Did they drug me too? I asked. Detective Bell said, we think so. Memory came back in pieces after that. Rain. My car parked near the bridge. Claire crying or pretending to cry. Even saying, "Then we do it now?" The gas station footage should have been gone, but the owner backed up clips when cars left without paying. One clip from that night showed my car pulling in at 9:42 p.m. At 9:49, Claire's car pulled in. At 10:07, Evan's truck arrived with the headlights off. At 10:18, my car left. I was not driving. A person in my raincoat sat behind the wheel. The camera angle was bad, but the build was wrong. Smaller, shorter. Tessa. Evan's truck followed. Then at 10:27, the camera caught me stumbling from behind the gas station dumpster, alive but barely standing. An old gray sedan pulled up. A man got out, helped me into the passenger seat, and drove away. His name was Roy Pritchard. He was 68, a retired truck mechanic with insomnia. He told Detective Bell he found me soaked, confused, and vomiting. He thought I was hurt. He tried to take me to a hospital, but I panicked whenever he said police. So he took me to the motel, paid for one night in cash, and left a note with the clerk to call an ambulance if I got worse. Then he went home, saw my face on the news, and froze. He had saved my life by accident, and sometimes that is all a person gets to be in someone else's story. Roy gave a statement. He gave the motel receipt. He even saved the blanket from his car in a trash bag because he did not know what to do with it. My hair was on it. Traces of the sedative were on it. Now we had proof I had been drugged. Proof Claire had access to the drug. Proof Evan and Claire were together the night I disappeared. Proof my death had been staged. But Detective Bell wanted more. He wanted the money trail. He wanted them to say enough to bury themselves. And I knew exactly how to make Evan talk. Evan loved money. But he loved control more. He loved being the smartest person in the room. He loved explaining things slowly, like everyone else was lucky to keep up. So we gave him one more victory. Through a lawyer Detective Bell trusted. Evan received a notice. It said an additional accidental death policy had been discovered. One my father had supposedly taken out for me years ago. It was fake. A legal trap, created with court approval and monitored carefully. The amount was $750,000. Enough to make a greedy man stupid. The notice said the claim required a recorded beneficiary verification meeting because of irregular paperwork. Evan agreed within an hour. Claire called him again and again that afternoon. By then, Detective Bell had a warrant for their calls. I heard one recording later. Claire said, "This is too much. It feels wrong." Evan laughed. "Now you grow a conscience." "I'm serious." "No. You're scared because Natalie was always the brave one." There was a long silence. Claire said, "Do not say her name like you miss her." He answered, "I miss what she was worth." I listened to that line twice. The first time, it broke something. The second time, it healed something. Love can make you doubt your own eyes. Betrayal can make you search old memories for proof that maybe you were foolish, maybe you missed the signs. Maybe some part of it was your fault. But nobody says I miss what she was worth by accident. That was not a mistake. That was a confession of the soul. The verification meeting happened on a Friday morning in a downtown office building. Evan arrived early in a navy suit and polished shoes. Claire arrived 11 minutes later, though she was not supposed to be there. She wore the black dress from my funeral. I watched from behind one-way glass with Detective Bell beside me. My hands were cold. My heart was steady. The lawyer asked Evan about my final days, our finances, and the events around my death. Evan performed beautifully. He lowered his eyes at the right moments. He said our marriage was deeply loving. Though private, he said I had seemed anxious before my trip. He said I had talked about selling the shop. He said I sometimes drove too fast in the rain. Each lie was a little murder. Then the lawyer asked, Was Claire Whitman your romantic partner? Ivan's face tightened. No. The lawyer slid a photo across the table. It showed Evan and Claire kissing outside a hotel in Dayton 6 months before my death. Evan's sadness disappeared. That has nothing to do with this.
Did your wife know?
No. I did. Not then, but now. The lawyer placed the forged business transfer on the table. Did Natalie sign this? Wes. On what date? Ivan answered. Interesting, the lawyer said. Because according to the death timeline you provided, she was already deceased. For the first time, Ivan had no words. Claire whispered, Ivan. He turned on her so quickly I flinched. Shut up. There he was. Not the grieving husband. The man underneath. The lawyer said calmly, Before you leave, I should tell you we have footage from the gas station. Ivan froze. We also have the storage unit, the hospice audit, Mrs. Alvarez's statement, and Roy Pritchard's statement. The Claire began to cry. Ivan looked at the lawyer. Then at the mirror. He knew the room had teeth. He said very softly, You can't prove I touched that girl. Claire made a sound like she had been slapped. The lawyer asked, Tessa Monroe. Ivan's eyes went flat. That was the moment the case stopped being about me alone. He had said her without saying her. That girl. He knew exactly who she was. Claire whispered, You said she woke up. Ivan turned toward her. You said the dose was enough. The room went silent. Even behind the glass, I felt those words land. You said the dose was enough. Claire covered her mouth with both hands. Ivan realized what he had done. Detective Bell opened the door. Ivan Harper, he said. Claire Whitman, you are both under arrest. I expected to feel joy. I did not. I felt tired. I watched Claire sob so hard she could barely stand. I watched Evan search for an exit that did not exist. Then his eyes found the one-way glass. For 1 second, he stared at his own reflection. I stepped forward behind it. He could not see me. Not really. But maybe some part of him felt me there, alive, watching. His face changed. Fear, not grief, not guilt, fear, and I realized that was the only mourning he would ever do for me. The arrests made the news by sunset. ALV afar stagi dd8, peloti, heusbat biend and bastidi. Sikel the siki vctm idfed. Reporters shouted questions outside the police department. How did it feel to be alive? Did I know about the affair? What would I say to my husband? I said nothing. Some stories are too sacred to feed to strangers on a sidewalk. The trial took almost a year. People think justice is one big moment, like a door slamming shut. It is not. Justice is paperwork. Delays. Bad coffee in courthouse hallways. It is sitting 10 feet away from the people who tried to erase you while lawyers argue over calendar dates. It is hearing your life reduced to exhibits. Exhibit 12I. Form. Exhibit 990 gas station footage. Exhibit 2014 sedative audit. Exhibit 31 recorded verification meeting. It is watching a jury look at you. Then look at the people who called you dead. Claire took a plea before the trial ended. She testified against Evan. I wish I could tell you she looked like a monster on the stand. It would make the story cleaner. She did not. She looked small, pale, human. That was almost worse. She said the affair began after my miscarriage, when I was emotionally unavailable. She said, Evan told her I would leave him and ruin him financially. She said the plan was only supposed to make me disappear, long enough for him to move money and force a settlement. Then Tessa saw Evan switching plates near the gas station. Claire said Tessa threatened to call police. Evan said they could not leave witnesses. Claire cried when she said that. She cried mostly for herself, but maybe somewhere inside those tears there was one drop for Tessa. I did not forgive her. Forgiveness is not a bill you owe the people who hurt you. Evan did not testify. He sat through the trial like a man offended by inconvenience. When the prosecution played the recording, and the jury heard him say he missed what I was worth, he stared straight ahead. Only once did he look at me. It was during closing arguments. The prosecutor said, "Natalie Harper survived because a stranger stopped his car. Tessa Monroe did not survive because these defendants decided she was disposable." Ivan looked back. I held his gaze. I wanted him to see that I was not the woman from the funeral program. I was not the smiling photo in the white frame. I was not the wife who softened her words so his pride would not bruise. I was the witness he failed to kill. The jury took less than 6 hours. Guilty, conspiracy, fraud, forgery, kidnapping, murder for Tessa. Ivan received life without parole. Claire received 30 years as part of her plea. When the judge read the sentence, Ivan finally spoke. He turned toward me and said, "You ruined everything." The courtroom went so quiet I could hear the lights humming. I stood because I wanted my knees to remember they belonged to me. "No," I said. "I survived everything." That night, I went back to the cemetery. My name had already been removed from the headstone. Tessa's sister had chosen a new marker with Tessa's real name, her real birthday, and a line from a song their mother used to sing. I brought sunflowers because Tessa's sister told me she hated lilies. I sat beside her grave for a long time. "I'm sorry," I said. The wind moved through the trees. Sometimes sorry is too small, but it is still the only word that will come. A week later, I met Tessa's sister, June, in a diner halfway between Ohio and Tennessee. She had Tessa's eyes. Clear hazel, quick to fill with tears, quicker to harden when she tried not to cry. She said, "I was angry at you at first." "I understand. I mean really angry. You were alive, and she was in your grave. It felt like you stole her ending." I nodded because grief does not have to be fair to be real. June looked out the window. Then I read what happened. And I thought, no. They stole from both of you. We sat there for 3 hours and talked about Tessa. Not the case. Not the evidence. Tessa. By the end of that lunch, Tessa was not just the girl. Not just the victim. Not just the woman in my grave. She was someone I would carry. People always ask about revenge. They lean closer when they ask, even if they pretend not to. They want to know if I wanted Evan to suffer. They want to know if I ever imagined walking into his prison and telling him he lost. The truth. Yes, I imagined it. I imagined it during the trial. I imagined it when I found new locks on my house. I imagined it when I woke at 3:00 a.m., with rain in my dreams and Evan's voice in my head. But real revenge is not always loud. Sometimes revenge is opening the curtains in a house they tried to steal. Sometimes it is changing your name back to yourself on every document. Sometimes it is selling the wedding ring and using the money to help pay for Tessa's headstone. Sometimes it is laughing at something stupid without feeling guilty you survived. Sometimes it is telling the truth so clearly that nobody can bury it again. 2 years after the trial, I reopened Second Light in a smaller space near German Village. I almost chose a new name, but Mrs. Alvarez said, "No. You do not let them take the name too." So, Second Light stayed. The shop was different. I was different. The pieces I restored were different too. I stopped trying to hide the cracks completely. I learned to fill some of them with thin gold lines. Bright marks that showed where something had broken and been made strong in another way. Customers loved those pieces most. One woman held a cracked blue vase and said, "It looks like it has a story." I said, "It does. I do not know exactly when I stopped feeling dead. It did not happen when Evan was sentenced. It did not happen when the headlines faded. It did not happen when my bank accounts were unfrozen or when the court returned my house. It happened one ordinary morning in October. I woke before sunrise. Rain tapped softly against the windows. For a second, my heart raced the way it always did when I heard rain. Then I breathed in. Coffee, old wood, laundry soap, the lavender candle misses. Alvarez kept buying me, even though I told her I had enough candles to light a cathedral. I got out of bed, walked downstairs barefoot, and opened the front door. The maple tree had turned red overnight. Leaves covered the steps like little flames. For the first time in a long time, I did not think about the bridge. I did not think about the casket. I did not think about Evan's hand on polished wood or Claire whispering that it was almost over. I thought about breakfast. That sounds small. It was not. It was the most beautiful thing in the world. A normal thought. A living thought. Later that day, I drove to the cemetery with one sunflower. I sat beside Tessa's grave and told her about the shop, about June, about the maple tree. Then I said something I had not said out loud before. I'm going to be happy. Not every minute, maybe not every day, but I'm going to build a life so full that what they did becomes only one chapter. The wind moved the sunflower petals. I took that as permission. On the way home, I stopped at the old bridge. It had been repaired after my car went through the railing. New metal shone silver against old concrete. The river moved slowly below, brown and cold, carrying leaves toward someplace I could not see. I took my wedding ring from my pocket. I had sold the diamond months before for Tessa's headstone, but I kept the plain gold band. I thought I needed it for proof, then for anger, then to remember. But standing on that bridge, I realized I did not need a circle from a broken vow to remember anything. My body remembered. The court remembered. Tessa's grave remembered. And I remembered enough. I threw the ring into the river. It flashed once in the gray light and disappeared. I waited for sadness. It did not come. What rose instead was peace. Not soft peace. Not gentle peace. A hard-won peace with dirt under its nails. I got back in my car. My real car, bought with my own money, registered under my living name. I drove home slowly because the road was wet and because I was no longer running from anything. Sometimes people still recognize me. At the grocery store. At the shop. Once at a gas station, which was almost funny in a terrible way. They lower their voices and say, "You're that woman." I say, "Yes?" They say, "I'm so sorry." I say, "Thank you." Then they ask the question they really want to ask. How did you survive? For a long time, I gave practical answers. A stranger found me. A detective believed me. A neighbor paid attention. Evidence added up. The jury listened. All of that is true, but it is not the whole truth. I survived because some stubborn part of me refused to accept a world where my husband got to write my ending. I survived because my name belonged to me before it belonged on any policy, deed, headstone, or funeral program. I survived because love, when it is real, does not erase you. It does not count your value in dollars and signatures. And when love is fake, when it is only a mask worn by greed, the truth has a way of waiting behind the glass until the mask slips. Avon tried to turn me into a ghost. Claire tried to turn friendship into a weapon. Together, they tried to bury me under lies, water, paperwork, and flowers. But they made one mistake. They forgot that a woman who has already watched her own funeral is not afraid of being seen. My name is Natalie Harper. I was declared dead on a Monday. I buried my marriage on a Friday. And every day after that, I chose to live so loudly that even the people who tried to silence me would have to hear it. They tried to bury my name, but all they did was plant it.